Princess Eris Valerin had never been afraid of shadows until they started whispering her name. The Valturi Palace, carved from crystalline bone of extinct star beasts, shimmered under twin moons. Its corridors, once a haven of measured elegance, now pulsed with an anxious rhythm that set Eris's nerves on edge. Her ceremonial cloak, woven from light itself, flowed behind her like a second soul as she made her way through the upper halls. Tonight the walls hummed a different melody, a resonance she could feel in the pit of her stomach. At the central arch, Chancellor Ryvek awaited her. His four eyes blinked out of sync, a rare show of unease for a man trained from birth to be unreadable. "Your Highness," he said with a formal bow of crossed forearms, "the High Council demands your presence. The matter is ancestral." That word hit like a blade. Minutes later, in the floating chamber of deliberation, 7 ancient minds surrounded her. Hovering within transparent orbs, the Valtari elders were living memories, conscious archives that had ruled her people long before she was born. It was Elder Tashar, voice like wind over hollow rock, who finally spoke. 25 cycles ago, your family was spared extinction. A lone warrior stood between House Valerin and oblivion. He asked nothing, only that should he ever return, his debt be honored. Eris frowned. Why would we owe anything to a forgotten ghost? A hologram materialized, a human male, perhaps 30 in Terran years, with obsidian hair and frost blue eyes. His stance wasn't regal, but there was power in it. Controlled, coiled, dangerous. "He has returned," Ryvek said, "and invoked the right of binding. He seeks you." Silence collapsed over the chamber. "You're telling me," Eris said slowly, "that I'm to marry a complete stranger because of something that happened when I was a toddler?" The elder said nothing. Her gaze returned to the hologram. There was a familiarity to those eyes, something ancient buried in the dust of memory. A flash of blood, a boy's scream, her mother's scent of ozone and lilies, shadows falling like teeth. "Who is he?" "Named Kyle Riven," Ryvek said. "Ex-human military, vanished from all records during the fall of Earth. He's resurfaced and made a claim, a legitimate one." Eris turned away from the council. "How long do I have?" 7 days, Ryvek replied. "Per the accord, the bond must be fulfilled within that time." She didn't respond, not right away. The council dismissed, the halls fell silent. And in the quiet, the shadows whispered again. Princess Saria paced the length of the private war chamber, the folds of her crystalline robe swaying like liquid starlight. Outside, the spires of Velthar Prime shimmered with the artificial dawn of a world suspended between tradition and tremor. But inside her chest, the rhythm of tension had not relented since the council's declaration. He had arrived, the human, the stranger whose existence was as much myth as it was obligation. "Syria, Chancellor," Myron's voice broke her spiral. "He's here." She turned slowly. "Did he speak?" "Only to confirm his name. Rael Thorn. He carries the seal, and he's not what we expected." "Are they ever?" she muttered, then sighed. "Bring him." The chamber doors hissed open. The human entered with a presence that didn't belong to a petitioning subject. He didn't bow, didn't glance at the alien guards lining the walls. His gaze found hers like a tactical scan. Cold, alert, almost calculating, yet underneath it all, something unreadable glimmered. Rael Thorn was not tall by Varaxian standards, but he carried a warrior's balance. His earth-forged combat suit was plain worn and bore no insignia. His hands were gloved, but the aura he radiated wasn't that of a diplomat or suitor. It was of someone who had survived many deaths and wasn't done with war. "Princess Syria of House Kitwer," he said, his voice low, clipped. "I have come to collect what was promised." "You believe you can claim a life debt by marriage?" she asked, folding her arms, unamused. "No," he replied. "I'm here because your father swore it would be the only way to stop me from dying on your soil, and because I was told my bloodline now belongs here." Myron stiffened beside her. Saria narrowed her eyes. "You think this is about blood?" "No," he said again. "It's about what's coming." She didn't ask what he meant. Something in her bones already knew. The hegemony. She had seen the movement in the outer sectors, felt the pull in the temple archives. The timing was too exact. Tell me, she said, why now? Why appear after decades? Rael's gaze flickered just for a moment. Because I waited for the last empire to fall, he answered. And this one is next. The walls of the royal archives pulsed gently with ancient memory, crystalline veins glowing with stored knowledge thousands of years old. Saria's footsteps echoed across the silent hall, but she wasn't alone. Rael walked a step behind her, silent but alert like a predator moving through sacred ground. You've read our history, she asked without turning. I felt your history, he replied. She frowned. How, when I stepped into your throne room, something spoke to me, like a voice through stone. Old female, wounded. The throne network, she whispered. It's dormant. It has been since my great-grandmother's time. Then something woke it up, Rael said, his tone sharp. They stopped before a massive archival slab carved from obsidian crystal, humming faintly. This is where it began, she said. The prophecy, the guardian bond. Rael cocked an eyebrow. You believe in prophecy? I believe in patterns, she replied. In stories that repeat until someone dares to write a new one. A burst of static cut through the air. Then Myron's voice echoed from her comm link. Your Highness, we have a situation. Energy signatures at the edge of the Velthar ring. Hegemony warships. 4, no banners. Syria turned to Rael. His eyes were already scanning an unseen battlefield. They found me, he said. Too soon. Can you fight, she asked. He met her gaze. If I couldn't, I wouldn't be here. In the palace war room, the atmosphere bristled. Alien generals argued in 3 languages while fleet schematics flickered above the holotable. You'll never make it through the perimeter alive, General Kevar growled. Even with your human instincts. Rael stepped forward, calm and surgical. Then don't follow me, he said. Just make sure they don't get out once I'm in. Syria watched as her counsel turned to him, not as a stranger now, but as something worse. A variable. A threat. She stood beside him. My father's debt may have bound us, she said, her voice clear. But make no mistake, this man is not here to claim a bride. He's here to make sure we survive what's coming. Silence, then slow nods from across the room. Outside the city, lightning rippled across the clouds as the first ship descended. Rael stood atop the outer wall, one hand resting on the hilt of an alien-forged blade, gifted only to those the royal archives deemed worthy. He didn't speak. He didn't pray. He waited, and in that silence the war came to him. The first impact trembled through the bones of the palace. Syria stood at the center of the ancient courtyard, her ceremonial gown soaked with rain, her silver hair plastered to her cheeks. Rael stood beside her, his armor-scorched eyes scanning the sky. Above them, the energy shield shivered like a dying breath. The core node's failing, she shouted through the wind. It won't hold. Rael pressed his palm to the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the very stone beneath them lit up lines of alien script, winding toward the outer walls like veins of fire. Syria staggered. What are you doing? I'm not doing it, Rael said. We are. The guardian bond. The phrase echoed through her soul like thunder. Suddenly, the clouds cracked open, not with lightning, but with ships. Dozens of them, sleek black and silent. The hegemony had arrived. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Hegemony dropships pierced the sky like daggers disgorging black-armored shock troops onto the palace grounds. Every royal defender activated their weapons blades of plasma shields of ion, but it wasn't enough. The enemy wasn't just here for war. They were here for him. Rael Syria screamed, but he was already gone, cutting through the smoke, drawing fire away from the civilians, still evacuating through the temple halls. Then the beam hit. Not plasma, not thermal. Dark light. He crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from his chest plate. Syria gasped and ran to him. The ground beneath her feet pulsed with memory as she crossed it. Memories of queens past, warriors slain, and lovers lost. Her hands found Rael's armor, searing hot and pulsing faintly. He was still alive, but barely. They'll kill everyone, he whispered, blood in his throat, unless you finish this. She looked into his eyes and then she let go. Of fear, of doubt, of protocol. Energy erupted from her chest in a burst of violet-white light, sending the nearest enemies flying. Her wings unfurled, not flesh, not feather, but pure force, ancient and terrible. Every hegemony soldier within sight fell to their knees. Not from pain, from awe. Get up, she said to Rael. I can't hold them alone. He stood leaning on her, his own strength returning as hers bled into him. Their skin glowed where they touched. Not love, not yet, but fusion. The last wave came just before dawn, and Saria, glowing like the first sunrise in the universe, rose into the sky and tore it in half. While below, the last human warrior raised his stolen rifle and roared like a god. Together, they didn't just fight back. They changed the war. The silence after battle was worse than the noise of it. Saria stood barefoot on shattered crystal tiles, her ceremonial gown now, a ragged silhouette clinging to her skin. Rael walked beside her, his armor peeled open like a second skin that had nearly failed him. They were both marked now, not by blood or war, but by energy. The Guardian bond had begun rewiring them in ways neither understood. Where are we going? Rael asked, his voice hoarse but focused. To the vault, Saria said, where the crown keeps its oldest secrets. The place even I wasn't allowed to enter before tonight. The doors weren't guarded. They were waiting. Deep beneath the palace, the temperature dropped, and the walls began to pulse with light that had nothing to do with torches or tech. Alien language danced across the air itself. Saria didn't read it, but Rael did. He reached out, not even knowing why, and the symbols responded, glowing brighter, shifting in shape to accommodate him. You understand this, she said quietly. I shouldn't, but he did. Every step they took forward, the structure seemed to recognize him more. Not her. Him. They reached the heart of the vault. The floor opened into a vast chasm. Floating above it, tethered to nothing, was an orb the size of a small building. Gold translucent and humming with life. Rael staggered. That thing, he whispered. It's calling to me. It's the seed core, Saria replied. The source of Raxia's planetary shield's atmospheric calibration, even our longevity. But it's dying. The light of the orb flickered. Your ancestors built this place, she said softly. My ancestors were human, and so were ours once. When Rael placed his hand on the orb, the air shivered. Images exploded behind his eyes, stars being born. Galaxies colliding, voices whispering in a tongue older than history. And then, a name. The true name of the enemy. Not just the hegemony, not the fleets, but the force behind them. They're not just conquerors, Rael breathed. They're erasers. They wipe bloodlines from reality itself. They don't kill civilizations, they unmake them. Saria touched his arm and the orb responded again, pulsing faster, brighter. The seed recognizes us both, she said. Maybe this was the plan all along. He turned to her. Then we finish it. In the final moment before the orb dimmed, it cast two shadows onto the ancient walls, human and alien, perfectly aligned. And far above in the silence of space, a dozen hidden satellites blinked awake for the first time in 10,000 years. They had found their guardians. The countdown had begun. The ancient tower was buried under a jungle of silver-barked trees and vines that bled light. No one had seen it for centuries, but Saria had followed the seed core's vision, encoded not in language but in memory, in instinct. Rael had barely slept since touching the core. His mind reeled with fragments, code blueprints, faces of long-dead people who called him kin, though he'd never met them. The tower called to him like an old friend left behind. This is one of the original 12, Saria whispered as they broke through the vines. A beacon node. They say it chose its guardian, and then shut down when he died. Not shut down, Rael murmured. Just waiting. They reached the base. A staircase spiraled downward, carved into obsidian black stone. On each step, strange carvings pulsed as Rael passed symbols of war union sacrifice. Then a voice. No comms, no broadcast. It spoke in Rael's mind. Initiate recognized. Human strain. Designation Rael genome primitive recovered. Proceed to core interface. He blinked. You heard that, Wesum. Saria shook her head. Heard what? At the tower's heart lay a golden chamber. A pedestal rose from the center like a blade from the earth etched with spiraling runes. Energy thrummed in the air, sharp as a scream. Syria pressed her hand to the pedestal first and screamed. Rael caught her before she fell. Her body shook violently, eyes wide. I saw, she gasped, the final war, the fall of the precursors. They used these towers as anchors for gods. He stepped forward. This time his palm fit into the pedestal perfectly. The beacon ignited. The jungle shook. The air rippled. And above them a massive, invisible satellite bloomed with light. Every living being within 10,000 kilometers felt it. A pressure behind the eyes, a voice in the bones. First Guardian node reactivated. And then they came. A fleet of black ships blinked into orbit, not to scout, not to invade, to destroy the node. They've been watching, Saria whispered, waiting for any sign the Guardians might return. They're not going to wait anymore, Rael said, drawing his blade. They're coming now. As fire rained from the sky and the tower's shield flared to life, Saria touched her circlet. A shimmer spread across her skin, and her voice deepened, not just hers now, but a chorus of queens and ancestors long gone. She stepped into the storm beside Rael. He looked at her and smiled. We light one beacon, numb and burn down their entire darkness, she finished. Together they raised the first light. The war had truly begun. They had one victory. One beacon lit. But dawn had not brought peace. It brought him. The transmission came without warning in ancient Varaxian frequency that hadn't been used in 2 lifetimes. And Saria recognized the voice before the transmission finished its first word. Princess of nothing, it sneered. Did you think your bloodline could hide forever behind ruins and ghosts? Siria's breath caught. The name was poison on her lips. General Varric had been Syria's uncle, once her father's brother, once a hero, once family. He'd vanished in the early days of the collapse. Some said he died in the first failed defense of the homeworld. Others whispered of exile, of deals made in the dark. Now she had her answer. The image flickered. Varric stood in the center of a bridge suspended over a cliff-black armor, glinting with unnatural light. His eyes, once proud and warm, now shimmered with the same sickly hue they'd seen in corrupted enemies. You lit the first beacon, brave but foolish. You've drawn their gaze. Rael stepped beside her. He's infected. No, Syria said quietly. He chose this. The cliff bridge was hours away, a forgotten span from the days when the beacons linked whole continents. Rael prepped the transport in silence. Syria watched the sky, her fists clenched. You don't have to go, Rael said finally. I do. He's baiting you. Yes. Rael studied her. I'm coming with you. She didn't argue, because a part of her, an ancient royal part, knew this confrontation had always been waiting. They landed at twilight. The air shimmered with residual energy, the kind that clung to old technology and older betrayals. Varric was waiting. Nice of you to bring a pet, he said when Rael stepped forward. Is that what it takes now to unlock the old powers sleeping with a human? Rael didn't flinch. Try me. Varric laughed low and ugly. I remember Earth warriors, loud, fragile, noble. They died screaming. Syria's voice cut through the dusk like a blade. You were the one who showed me how to fly a skimmer, who carried me on your shoulders when I fell. What happened to you? Varric's grin faded. The universe doesn't reward loyalty. It rewards power. Then he moved. Faster than Syria remembered. Faster than Rael expected. The bridge exploded into chaos. Rael blocked the first strike barely. Varric's blade hissed with corrupt energy, and every parry made Rael's arm go numb. Syria called to the beacon inside her mind, trying to pull its light into her blood. But Varric had learned to block it, twist it. They were losing. Until Rael did something no Varaxian ever would. He let himself bleed. His plasma blade dropped. He took Varric's strike but stepped inside it, and with a human grunt of effort, he slammed his forehead into the traitor's face. The blow echoed through the bridge. Both men staggered. Rael spat blood. Sorry, he muttered to Syria, needed him to think I was weak. She laughed an incredulous, wild sound. And that laugh was the distraction Rael needed. He drove his blade through Varric's side, not to kill, but to bind. Syria stepped forward and summoned the beacon's light. and sealed the corruption inside Varric like a cage storm. He screamed as the energy forced itself inward, his own body rejecting the darkness he'd welcomed. Then silence. Rel caught Syria as she sagged. "That was your uncle," he asked. "Was a Cern up Zri." They stood there together, two warriors on a crumbling bridge, wind howling around them. "He wasn't the last," Rael said quietly. No, Syria agreed, but he was the first to fall. She looked to the horizon, "And we'll make sure he's the last to rise." The sanctuary was older than the Varaxian Empire itself, older than memory. They descended into it not as conquerors, but as children of a forgotten truth. Rael could feel it in his bones, humming like ancient music. Every step forward stirred the dust of myths. Syria's voice was barely a whisper. This is where they made the first guardians. A great hall opened before them. Vaulted ceilings held no stars, only runes that moved like fireflies. In the center, encased in crystal, so old it wept, light stood the statue. No, not a statue. A woman. Eyes closed, wings broken. Yet even in ruin, her presence bent the air around her. "She's still alive," Rael said. He didn't know how he knew. Syria nodded. They sealed her after the sundering. Said she became too dangerous. Too compassionate. Compassionate is dangerous to those who fear change. A tremor shook the sanctuary. A voice echoed not from speakers but from the stone itself. "You are not yet worthy." Shadows formed in the arches, not creatures, reflections, failed versions of themselves. Rael saw a cruel, violent mockery of himself step forward, blood on its hands, hate in its eyes. Syria's mirror sneered. "Your heart is soft. You cling to love in a galaxy made for war." Rael raised his blade. Syria stepped forward. "I am soft. I do love. That is not weakness. That is why we survive." She reached out past the fear, past the noise, and touched the crystal. The light shattered. The woman opened her eyes, and the galaxy changed. Rael fell to one knee, his body overwhelmed by the surge. But Syria stood, arms open as energy flooded into her veins. She didn't glow. She burned. The fallen wings of the woman lifted, mended. Not on the statue, on Syria's back. She turned and her eyes were no longer violet. They were every star in the sky. Rael stared at her. "Syria." "No," she said softly, "not just." Outside, the sky cracked. A fleet had come, thousands strong, ships that devoured light. A final challenge. Rael stood beside her. "What now?" "So at once." Syria extended her hand. "We end this." They rose through the temple roof, carried by will-not wings. The fleet opened fire. Time slowed. Syria raised her arm and the blast dissolved into stardust. Rael's sword became light itself, answering the bond they'd forged. And together they walked through the heart of destruction. Ships fell, not burned, not broken, but transformed. Their crews freed from the madness of corruption, their systems healed by something deeper than technology. The war ended not in fire, but in understanding. Back on the surface, the survivors watched the sky. Then she returned. Syria, but more. A queen and a goddess, and Rael her chosen. In the new era that followed, they did not build thrones. They built sanctuaries, places where power served life, not ruled over it. And everywhere their story spread, two souls, one love, one purpose, hope ignited. For in the darkest age, the galaxy had seen a light, not from weapons, not from conquest, but from connection. The age of guardians had begun, and its first heartbeat was love.